Palm Sunday, we dress it up as a parade, a festival of waving branches and smiling faces, a celebration that feels safe and familiar. But look again. Strip away the pageantry, and you will see this is not a parade. This is a confrontation in broad daylight. Jesus enters Jerusalem with a purpose that unsettles, with an intention that refuses to be ignored. Jesus does not knock politely at the door of power. He does not wait for that invitation. He claims what is needed for the work of God without apology. He sends his disciples to take the colt. And if anyone dares to question, the answer is simple. The Lord needs it. No negotiation, no justification. He names what is holy, and he takes it. That is authority that disrupts the comfortable order. Listen to that again. That is authority that disrupts the comfortable order. I can imagine that some of you are still shocked at the fact that I flipped the table during the gospel. Part of that is because it disrupted your comfortable order. Much like things that happen in our society, when folks see that there's a bundle of clothing in Wabi Hall, and ask, when is this going to be put away? That's your comfort level. Instead of saying, why do we need bundles of clothing on the table? What is the purpose? You're asking, when is it going to be put away? You're missing the point. You're missing the disruption. The clothes is there because there is a need in the community. A need for us to see those who need that clothing. Your question should be, how are we going to reach those folks who do need the clothing to come and know that we have it for them? See, that's what was happening with the tables. They knew there was a need, but they were banking on that need. Much like televangelists do now. You wonder why other churches have so much money. Because they use prosperity gospel and say, you'll get more blessings if you give me more money. See, I actually thought about that with our transition pending from this building, this location, to an unknown location in our future. I told Judy, well, maybe I should start practicing prosperity gospel, especially for those who don't want to move buildings. Well, start giving me millions, and we won't have to move. Because the calculation is that we need 5 to 7 million in our bank and in investments for us to never worry about closure and to stay in this building on this property. So if I need to change gears and say, you need to give me more money, not because I need a jet, not because I need a mansion or a Rolls Royce, but because you want to stay in this property, then we need to get more money from you. You'll be blessed. You just got to give me more. Imagine if that was the type of pastor you had. How many of you would choose not to come back? Several of you would not come back. They're like, forget it. I give what I can because I want to. Since I've started, I've told you, I don't care if you give us a quarter or give us $25. If you're doing it wholeheartedly, that is what matters. Imagine if I said, oh, you need a home visit? Okay, that'll be $100. You need a hospital visit? It's an emergency? That's $500. I'll wait to see it in our system before I go and visit you. Some of you may go bankrupt or say, no, I'm good. I don't need a visit. Or for communion, I said, well, in order for you to receive communion, you need to give us $100. You don't give us $100, you don't get communion. How would that seem to you? See, when I started, this congregation used to do the collection before communion. If you paid attention over the last few years, we do it after communion now. Now, theologically, there's arguments for either one. But for me, from my theological perspective, is while I appreciate the first one of collecting before communion and understand it, personally, I don't want it to seem like I'm paying to receive communion. And that's why I flipped it to where we do communion and then we do the offering. Because it is a gift to receive communion. It is a gift to come to that table. But let us not be deceived. History is littered with those who claim the name of God to justify harm, to exclude, to oppress. This morning I read a headline from a very popular televangelist that's in the local area, who said that our current president has been anointed and lifted by God, and that we should be voting to keep him in power during the midterms. On Palm Sunday, to read that headline kind of contradicts the whole message of Palm Sunday, don't you think? Now, not going to tell you who to vote for, but if we're following the teachings of this hippie, liberal, disruptive guy who flips tables, it should not be a hard choice. It's to vote for those who uplift the people, especially those in need. See, Jesus didn't come to exclude or oppress. That is not the authority Jesus wields. He does not dominate. He does not control. Although many churches, pastors, and lay leaders wish to control people through the church. Ask yourself, in the last few decades, why is it that the pews in generally most congregations, most mainstream denominations, are more and more empty? Because people are tired of being controlled by religion. Now, yes, there is a level of indoctrination. Any church, even this one. But I would hope that in this church, in this congregation, that indoctrination is welcomed by you, not spoon-fed to you. Jesus does not seek validation from the powers of his day, nor from ours. His authority is not the authority of empire, but the authority of truth. He comes to unmask, to liberate, to call us out from the shadows we have learned to live in. Picture the processions of empire. Pilate riding in with banners, soldiers, the clang of armor, the threat of violence in every step. Power on parade, reminding the people who rules. Now look at Jesus. He comes not with armies, but with peasants. Did y'all like this morning's peasants? Yes, it's you. Not a war horse, but on a borrowed colt. We couldn't get a colt in time, so maybe next year. I need a volunteer to walk behind the colt. There was no weapons, only branches, ordinary, fragile, the kind you might use to shield yourself from the sun. The contrast is just not striking, it's a rebuke. Yet, do not be fooled. This is a procession, still a declaration, but it is not denomination on display. It is hope. The people cry, Hosanna, desperate for deliverance. But I wonder, did they know what they were asking for? Did they see the kind of liberation Jesus was bringing? Or did they only see what they wanted to see? Here's the truth we must face. We have become experts at taming Jesus. We shape him to fit our comfort, much like your discomfort this morning with a table. Our routines, our expectations. We keep him as a symbol, safe and manageable, as long as he does not disturb the peace we have made with our own illusions. But Jesus does not come to be managed. He comes to turn on the light, to reveal what we would rather keep in the shadows. This morning, you saw our Jesus walking in with the light, and he lit the candles before you. You might have missed that. Simple symbol of Jesus walking in with the peasants and light the way for you. Light, the only importance in this sanctuary. That symbol at the front. The symbol that he was crucified on. You know, growing up Catholic, and I know a lot of you did too, we grew up with an image of Jesus crucified on the cross. The funny thing is, my church growing up, Jesus was not crucified on the cross. He was actually floating in front of the cross, where you could see the wounds. So when I came into the UCC, it was not far-fetched for me to understand why we don't have Jesus on this cross. Can anyone tell me why we don't have Jesus on the cross? Does anyone know? Say what? He's risen. He walks among us. And today, we entered this sanctuary for the first time since I have served as your pastor. We are doing more to reenact a story. We are stepping into a moment that invites us to imagine what it means for Jesus to enter our midst. Not just as an idea, not just as a memory, but as a presence that reveals, challenges, and transforms. If Jesus truly enters this space, we must dare to ask ourselves, what belongs here? And what must be cast out? This cannot be a sanctuary for revival powers, or divided hearts. We are summoned back to the cross, not as decoration, but as a sign of hope and truth that Jesus brings. The cross is not safe. It is not comfortable. It is the place where illusions come to die. Because the story does not end with a procession. It moves directly into protest. Jesus enters a temple and begins overturning tables. This is not a random act of anger. It is a deliberate confrontation. The temple was not only a religious institution, it was an economic and political institution. It functioned with Rome's permission, and within it, systems had developed that exploited people while maintaining the appearance of faithfulness. Jesus names it clearly, a den of robbers. But if we are honest with ourselves, we must admit that systems today, religious and societal, still operate in the same patterns. Christianity has too often been shaped by political power, by nationalism, by the urge to control rather than to embody the liberating message of Jesus. Even in congregations with the best intentions, even here among us, we are not immune from participating in these patterns. There's a kind of exchange rate at work in religious spaces today. The belief that if we are not restrictive, we are not faithful. That if we do not draw hard lines, we are somehow betraying the truth. But that is not the gospel. That is fear masquerading as faith. The question raised in the temple is still relevant for us. Are we a house of prayer or a den of robbers? And that question is not just about buildings. It's about who we are, how we live, and what we embody. Let me speak plainly. There are burdens I carry as a pastor, things I witness and experience that weigh heavily. There are moments when the distance between what we say, we believe, and how we live feels like an abyss. And I wonder if this is what we see in Jesus here. Not a loss of control, but a fierce clarity and urgency that Jesus refused to look away from what is broken. Palm Sunday, then, it's not just about celebration. It is about the beginning of a holy disruption. It is a moment where Jesus steps fully into visibility, not to be affirmed by the systems around him, but to challenge them. And that brings us back to us. We cannot take pride in waving palms if we are unwilling to get our hands dirty overturning tables. We cannot shout Hosanna if we are not prepared to embrace that transformation that true liberation demands. We cannot celebrate the procession if we refuse to join the protest. Because Jesus does not enter with force or violence, but with truth, with courage, and with a kind of authority that does not wait to be validated. Therefore, the question is not whether Jesus is entering. The question is what it means for us when he does. Ask yourself, what am I doing to validate his examples? What am I doing to validate status quo? Let us pray. God of truth and holy courage, you come to us not only in moments of celebration, but in moments that challenge and confront us. You enter our lives with clarity, naming what is needed and calling us beyond what is comfortable. We confess that it is easier for us to welcome you as a symbol than to follow you as Lord. It is easier to wave palms than to examine the tables in our own lives that need to be overturned. Form us into people who are not afraid of your presence. Give us the courage to face what you reveal, the humility to acknowledge where we fall short, and the willingness to be transformed. Guard us from ever using your name to harm, exclude, or control. Instead, shape us into a house of prayer, grounded in justice, rooted in mercy, and open to all whom you call. As you enter again into our midst, Help us not only to celebrate, but to follow, trusting that even in disruption, you are making a way for healing, for hope, and for new life. We pray this in the name and in the way of Jesus.